Uh, I haven't really watched the second of it yet, but I reckon it's going to be tremendous. It's going to be tremendous. Tremendous. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's a question for you. Biden was definitely fucking played with, wasn't he? His decline. I've watched two grandmothers go through dementia, both different, slightly different. Nowhere near that quicker decline, and they didn't have access to the medications and stuff that a president would have. Think of the people in Hollywood that have ended up with dementia, who probably would have spoke out about it, knew shit, and had the courage. Michael J. Fox and Bruce Willis. Now, I just saw a clip from Times where it had three clippings, three news articles about Jeffrey Epstein. Two of them about his death certificates not being... One saying his death certificate was done the day before he died, and the next one from the guy that done his autopsy saying... or a doctor or something saying his death was not definitive. And then another thing about his auditions, like casting couches. And then another article comes up. Bruce Willis coined a term to do with dementia. You can't change the past, but you can certainly not repeat it. Well, they've changed it to you can't change the past, but you can ... Does that mean you can change it if you forget it? I don't know, I'm seeing something in there. My pattern brain's going off. I have the strangest pattern brain. I remember things from... Yeah, anyway. I'm remembering weird Freemasonry stuff. About going back to Grandad playing chess with me. Now, I know he wasn't a Freemason, but man, he hated Freemasons. Anyway.
Hello and welcome to Gareth Icke This Week. The UK government continues to implode as the rats are leaping off the scuttled ship. They're off desperately swimming for the shore. The first to walk the plank was Morgan McSweeney, chief architect of Sir Keir Starmer's rise to power, and by the look of it, the chief architect of his demise. Now, as it stands, Sir Keir Starmer is still the Prime Minister, having said that he's refusing to walk away. That's despite calls for his resignation over the naming of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador. Now, Mandelson had well-known connections to the notorious paedophile, child trafficker and Mossad agent, Russian agent Jeffrey Epstein, but that didn't seem to disqualify him from the job. But then Sir Keir Starmer said he'd scrap tuition fees, he'd decrease our energy bills, he wouldn't increase taxes, so him saying he won't walk is probably confirmation that he will. Now, I'm not sad to see the back of McSweeney with his obvious connections to the Israel lobby through Labour Together and his founding of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, a claim to be anti-hate group that seems to really hate anyone that speaks out against the official narrative on anything. But the problem with the parasite class is that, well, unlike our crumbling transport system, when one of them leaves, there's always another one along any minute. Now, the UK media aren't covering themselves in glory either, particularly the Times newspaper, who felt the furore building around the release of millions of files pertaining to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, including the aforementioned Peter Mandelson, was the perfect time to release a fluff magazine piece on, wait for it, Peter Mandelson. Now, even his jean and black slip-on shoe combo didn't divert the public's gaze from the extremely poor taste oozing off the pages. The Times chose to humanise Mandelson, running with a headline quote of, "I've had a lot of bad luck, no doubt some of it my own making." Well, that's not bad luck then, is it, Peter? That's just actions meeting consequences. So while the Times chose to photograph him being a domesticated modern man cooking with his dog in his Wiltshire property. That's a property he rents off Nat Rothschild. Yeah, it is, yeah. They chose to attempt a hit piece on me, however, for speaking out about lockdowns, mask mandates and vaccine injuries during the height of the COVID nonsense. And ironically, in their attempt to smear me and my views, they drafted in Imran Ahmed from the Centre for Countering Digital Hate for a quote. So a fella that knocks about with a notorious paedophile and sex trafficker is cool, that's sound, no problem. But a bloke that speaks out about the obvious destruction of his nation and the freedoms of its people is the bad guy, worthy of demonisation. That's good to know. I'm not bitter, though. Despite the piece and the reaction to it, leading in no small part to my then 2-year-old daughter no longer being welcome at her nursery school. Okay, I'm a little bit bitter, and understandably so, because when you target children, you cross a line, mate, and you unleash a fire within most human beings. So if you think a few derogatory words in a newspaper, a change of nursery, if you think that can garner an angered response, as it has, then what are we going to do about those within the Epstein files? Because even with the obvious redactions and sanitisation of certain individuals that, you know, they're still benefiting those that are behind the Epstein blackmail operation still seem to be useful. Even with all that, the contents we've been allowed to see still shows an abhorrently evil and sadistic underbelly, one that targets the most pure and innocent among us. A demonic class that has no political allegiance, that has no left or right preference, and no loyalty to anyone but their fellow demons. So with all that out there now, we're at a crucial time. It's a crucial time for humanity, and the test we now face as a species will be a defining one. We've got an opportunity to unite over this, to come together as a human race, to ignore the differences and to instead set them to one side while we focus on bringing down this house of cards. A house that's built on the bones of our ancestors, ones that were hoodwinked into dying on the battlefields for war criminal billionaires and arms company profits. One that's constructed upon the flesh of those killed for big pharma contracts, for shareholders, for stock exchange performance. A house that's held together with the blood of those so mercilessly sacrificed to these satanic masters. Now I say this is a test because if we allow this house to stand, to regroup, to rebrand, then we have failed as a people. We will have failed the most vulnerable in society by allowing ourselves to be too preoccupied with cultural division to avenge the children that have gone before and protect those to come. A few government advisors, spin doctors, politicians falling on their swords and then walking off into the sunset of, in his own words, book deals is not going to cut it. The people deserve to know every single person that committed atrocities, and every single one of them must be held to account. The people deserve to know who or what the head of the metaphorical snake really is, and it needs mounting on the wall as a warning to future generations. No ifs and no buts.
Tokyo is a feast for the senses. Neon lights blaze across Shinjuku and Shibuya, where thousands
Fuck off with that shit. Whoa. See that, people? Look at that.
of people stream across
If
the
we
world's
let Japan
busiest
into this
crossings.
country,
The air is alive with energy.
that's what it'll look like. I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in that. Perfect ad to put after what we just watched, really, if you can make the connection. It's exactly the same playbook, exactly the same script, almost to the letter, as how Hawaii was annexed by the United States back in 1893.